Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Astro Priestesses Roundtable for the Solar Aries month that begins with the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, opposite in the Southern Hemisphere season. We're looking at seasons. So this is a reminder again how signs are representative of the seasons. And the constellations are the backdrop that the signs move through 1 degree every 72 years. So over 26,000 years, every season will be with every constellation. I always like to send that reminder. And I was thinking, okay, I know I repeat myself a lot on things like that. But I was listening to a woman give a talk, and she's like, you learn through repetition. So I'm going to repeat and repeat and repeat again everything I've said. I was like, okay, I feel like I've got permission. Anyway, so this equinox is amazing. So we're going to start with that because, of course, on March 19th in some time zones, uh, it'll be late on the 19th, like 11 o'clock at night. And in other time zones, it'll be early in the morning on the 20th. And then, of course, in other time zones, will be a little later in the day, but depending on where you are, the equinox sun reaches that zero Aries point. And this is the seasonal time when we have the balance of day and night. We have the same amount of hours of daylight as we have night or dark, or you know, uh, the opportunity to experience that balance between the light and the dark. And this equinox, oh, and the other thing I want to say about equinox is that many cultures felt the equinox was a really important point. And I was remembering today that I read in this book from the Sacred Order of the Golden Dawn, and they wrote a book called Equinox and Solstice Celebrations. And one of the things they said about the equinox celebration, and the reason they did ceremonies around that time, was because it was when the magnetic field of the earth is lower. And the reason for that is because the sun is rising exactly due east and due west and traveling across the sky exactly due east and due west, meaning the equator of the earth, the whole day, the whole time. And so no matter where you are on the planet, that's what's happening. And I think at the poles, it might be that it's still either day or night, how the poles have their own unique experience, but everywhere else. And so uh, that is what is helping to lower the electromagnetic field of the earth. And another thing that I've said, and I have a video on this also that I'll put in the show notes, is that it's the time when there are more cracks in the electromagnetic field of the earth. And that's probably because the sun is rising due east and due west and dropping that electromagnetic field. And then the cracks can happen and the light can come in, and we have more of the aurora borealis that shows up at that time, and different amazing things that take place. So this is giving us an insight into how magical this time is. Another thing that happens at the spring equinox is that the galactic center is overhead as the sun is rising. So it doesn't matter what time, what day, it's like wherever you are, when the sun is rising, galactic center is overhead. And they've done studies that show that people's intuitive abilities are heightened when galactic center is overhead. So if you're doing an equinox sunrise ceremony, you can know that you can probably tune into a greater intuitive psychic abilities at that time. And they've found that psychic abilities increase exponentially when galactic center is overhead. They've done studies on it. That's also in the video, so I'll share more about that. Or you can see that to get more about that, but it's pretty cool. So what else did I want to say? Oh, a couple of things, and that is that the sun is very close to Neptune, so the exact Neptune conjunction happens on St. Patrick's Day. We're recording this a little bit before that. And so, but it's still really close. So the energy of that is still there. And one of the things I love about Neptune is that even though it's not always clear and easy, it's because we're tapping into the field of all possibilities, because Neptune represents the field of where source energy, where anything's possible. And when anything's possible, what do you choose? And that's why it can be confusing. But it also opens us up to possibilities maybe we haven't thought about. So we can tune into that energy at this equinox as well. And then Jupiter is going to be exact within minutes of the May cross quarter, also known as Beltane point, and that it can, and it's happening right at the equinox point. So it's kind of like paving the way into Beltane for us. And also all the amazing things happening with Jupiter and Uranus and that whole piece, which I won't share right now. I'll let others tune into that. But this equinox is truly starting a solar month that is going to probably rock our world in ways we aren't even clear of what that's going to be about yet. So with that, I'm passing it along.
I love what you shared, Kaylin, about the heightened intuition with the cross quarter above, because I just made my own observation, and I don't know, maybe others have made this observation as well, but in terms of reading energy, oftentimes we connect with people's crown chakras as the leading energy. And so it's like whatever somebody's really working with in the crown, it's kind of like what we're intuitively picking up on. But I also really liken the crown chakra to the midheaven. I don't know why exactly. That's just my intuitive hit on reading people's sort of overarching energy, kind of like what people are just going to see, not necessarily the details, but the spiritual mission. So that's really interesting because now you've just tied so many things together for me. I really love that. I think it's very powerful to tune into what is directly overhead. I mean, it would make sense. The midheaven is straight up into the sky, right? And so it's what we are directly downloading. So how powerful. I really love that. Sounds like a really practical way to play with energies, and especially if you're in a learning astrology phase, but you're really interested in the practical embodiment piece, it's like getting outside and tuning into, well, what is the season and different times of day, and when do I feel the most intuitive and able to access that gnosis, that connection to source. So that's really beautiful. I agree. I think this is going to be such a powerful season up ahead. I just love that to give the reminder too. We absolutely do learn through repetition. And so the energy that is set at the Aries equinox, it lasts through Aries season, Taurus season, and Gemini season. So for the following 3 months, what is initiated right now will absolutely be carried through. And for at the very least 3 months, but then we're also working with an eclipse portal. So that's at the very least rippling out 6 months. And then maybe if you have something else going on that's being really activated by the eclipse portal, maybe it's even longer. Maybe we're even tapping into 18 and a half, 19-year cycles. So this time has the potential to really ripple out beyond this moment. And if we tune into some of the energies where what of the other planets are doing in addition to the sun, we have Mercury, who just entered the pre-retrograde shadow phase at 15 degrees Aries just a couple days before the equinox. That was at 15 degrees Aries where the North Node was. So he entered pre-retrograde shadow phase, which means we want to start tuning into and making note of like, what are we thinking about? What are the repeating themes in our conversations? Where's the rub? Maybe we want to start tuning into where we're feeling irritated. That could be one expression, but it could also be where are we feeling inspired? Where are we feeling motivated? Where are we getting these new ideas and potentially very healing ideas? Because upon the ingress of the sun into Aries, Mercury is also conjunct Chiron, or he's applying to an exact conjunction with Chiron. So I just have a feeling we're going to be talking about a lot of the same healing themes, perhaps centered around how can we trust ourselves? How can we connect with our inner child, that divine child, innocent energy of Aries? Perhaps in what ways can we come back to a purity of our essence and innocence, perhaps? What does this look like individually? And also, what does it look like on the world stage? And what are some new choices, North Node, that we can make that perhaps get us out of our comfort zones? It kind of seems like this is a season where we get to just be bold and brave. These are qualities of Aries, to have the difficult conversations that would actually be so healing. And whether that's with ourselves to restore us to our purity and our innocence and self-trust, or whether that's with others as well. So I'll say that for now, and really excited to hear what everyone else has to say too.
Okay, I'm so inspired by what everyone's sharing and kind of going off of that, Nura, just kind of some themes of the Aries energy that I think is I'm an Aries sun, so my sun's at 15 degrees Aries, so we're like a lot of this stuff is happening. Um, but I like kind of tuning into this higher vibrational energy of Aries, which is what we're all kind of transforming into, and we're being initiated to transform into this, higher vibrational energy of Aries, like as Kaylin talks about, it's the that cosmic warrior, restoring cosmic order, and the sacred warrior restoring cosmic order. You say it in a different way, but there's this beautiful Aries energy that honors and protects what's holy and pure and sacred. And what it's really protecting too is like the Aries essence, which is Nura, what you spoke about, the divine child. Aries, if we want to look at, and one way to look at the zodiac, the first sign of the zodiac, it's spirit incarnating into matter. It's that divine spark. And so Aries, the energy of Aries, the essence of Aries is like living life truly alive, being that childlike innocence of I'm so excited to live life, and I have infinite possibilities, and there's so many different things in life I can experience. And so many of us, it's just the way of this really patriarchal world that we've lived in, that like Aries excitement has kind of been like squelched out of so many of us, where we get so into the hustle and the grind of life, and our this is a Chiron thing, our wounds, right? Where we really lose that like excitement to live life truly alive. And I feel like this Aries season, particularly this eclipse season and Mercury retrograde too, it's like this invitation to kind of shake that out of us to what's been inhibiting us from really living life truly alive. And that's been keeping us stuck and stagnant, with that North node there to kind of have this breakthrough and then to really like move forward. And Aries is about moving into new pathways opening, carving new paths forward, going into, uncharted, metaphorical, uncharted territory. So there's this invitation to really like get really present, be open to something wildly new, to reclaim that part of ourselves that's really excited to live life and excited to have life experiences. Because when we're in that energy, it's magnetic, right? It like pulls in these new opportunities, new pathways open, new doorways open that weren't there before, where all of a sudden there's a new opportunity, and new opportunities can come quick. And that's probably something that we might be experiencing this eclipse season, if we can really like tune into that pure Aries energy. I sense new pathways can just open, like where we didn't even see them coming. We've also got this building Jupiter Uranus conjunction that's happening like right at the end of Aries season, when we're going into Taurus season. And so I sense, the Mercury retrograde, pause and see things in a new way. Aries, be playful about the way we're seeing reality here. And that I feel like it will be this big reset to new opportunities. I mean, we're working with themes. We had that Chiron North Node conjunction and March, the exact one, but they're still with an orb that's still like a really prominent transit of the equinox chart. It's, the total solar eclipse we're having on April 8th. The sun and moon are conjunct Chiron. So while there's this invitation to have all this fun and playfulness, but also, we probably have big triggers, and these deep, deep things, our deepest wounds have probably been coming up since March. And still, this eclipse season, this is what eclipse seasons do, right? It's probably going to bring it up. And so there's this really powerful opportunity to heal it, to feel it and heal it. And yeah, there's so much more I could say, but I want to pause here.
Yes, always. It's so inspiring to tune into like all the messages that come from each one of us. And I think that's also like part of the mystery of Aries, is like embrace our uniqueness, that we don't have to fit in a mold that it was built before us. And I think that theme with Venus approaching Saturn just close to the equinox, and then just conjunct exactly the 21st. And then Mars is coming closer to Saturn, and both of them will be the guardians or the rulers of the eclipses. Is so interesting because it's like how many different ways we were told since we were little that the way we are is not possible and that we need to change in order to fit in a box. And Aries doesn't like that. Like it's a very instinctual energy of just the impulse of bringing something forward, and it's totally raw, it's totally like it's not sophisticated. And we will see more of the eclipses, but for me the lunar one on the 25th is talking a lot about our the ways that we don't show, like we don't show who we are in order to fit in others people labels of what we are supposed to be instead of who we truly are. and and I think that's the magic of astrology. It's just like every time I teach a class and we are talking about like the different relationships that is good for us, and that one person is like, ah, that will be totally the person for me. That will be my man, my partner. And the other one is like, no, it doesn't really turn me on. Like, that's not for me. And that's perfect. Like, that is the way we are supposed to be. But I think there is this tribal energy of fitting, like, just not trying to be seen. Like, we want to be seen, we want to start things, but then at the same time, there is this visceral fear of them being kicked out of the tribe. And Aries cannot wait until other people take action. It's like it's the one that is supposed to take the first step. And now everyone is supposed to be taking the first step into something. And it's going to be different from one people and for other people. But for the ones who have more Aries in their chart, it will be a lot more like, okay, go. But I think that Venus approaching Saturn and then Mars approaching Saturn, and in the solar eclipse that we will talk later, Mars is just about to hit Saturn. And it's like all those blockages of who you are is not possible. And I think the opportunity here is to just do like, and unleash like all the chains and just say, whatever. If you don't like me, it's your problem. It's not mine. I think that's the real healing of Aries is just, that's it. Like if we cannot have this relationship based on me being me and you being you, of course, Libra, then we either don't have a relationship or we reestablish the connection. So I think, yeah, it's a total portal of transformation. Yeah.
I love that. Yay, Mar. Thank you. And I love that you said portal too, because I have looked at eclipses as cauldrons and portals. They could be portals also, but interestingly, a dear priestess sister of mine I've known for over 27 years, I think. She had a little cauldron that she brought to an eclipse ceremony years ago, and I was starting to call it an eclipse cauldron, and on the bottom of it is stamped the word eclipse. I probably shared this before. She actually just gave that to me, and I meant to have it to show it to everybody because I'm not just making this up. But so, going into the cauldron and with all of the energies that are happening here, starting with the March 25th penumbral eclipse. So penumbral eclipses aren't really a big deal in terms of what you see. I mean, all eclipses have their energy, and it opens up the window that takes us to the total solar eclipse of April 8th. And so it's important. All eclipses are important, but it's not something that you can go out and see like, oh, wow, there's a shadow going across the face of the moon. It's like you might see a little bit of darkening of the moon if you're in the path of the eclipse, but you might not really notice much of anything. But what's interesting in a lunar eclipse is it's the shadow of the earth on the face of the moon. So we're looking at our own shadow. So if you can see a little bit of it, it's like we can see a little bit of our own shadow, and that can be something to tune into as we move towards the total solar eclipse. And of course, in the midst of all of that, Mercury's going retrograde in Aries, as has been already talked about, and will be stationing direct later as in Aries. So it's staying in Aries the whole time. So Aries is like the star of the show in a sense. and as we move to the total solar eclipse, which is absolutely astounding in terms of the things that are happening with that eclipse, and Chiron being exactly conjunct to the minute the sun and the moon at the point of totality, is just like, that could probably only happen in eons of time. It might be close at other times, and things could happen, but Chiron has a 50-year cycle, and the eclipses happen every, with the nodal axis every 18 and a half years. And so to get those to line up in that way and to be exact to the minute just blows my mind to even contemplate what that means. And so if we think about Chiron as the compassionate shamanic healer, also known as the wounded healer, but we all have wounds. So we have this opportunity to heal our wounds in ways that perhaps have never been available to us before. And so that, I feel, is one of the most profound opportunities of this eclipse cauldron. So what do we want to put into the cauldron? What are the wounds? What are the things that have held us back? What are the limiting beliefs? What is it that we can put into the cauldron? And because we're informing the mysteries as much as they're informing us, we can say, it's time. Yes, universe, this is the time, and here we are, and we're going to show up and be a part of this. So with that, I'm passing it on.
Oh my gosh, it's so powerful. I really think a piece of the awareness coming in is going to be very embodied, and maybe with this predominance of Mercury as well, and his retrograde, with Chiron being a very shamanic archetype and doing this work of soul retrieval, but it's in relation to a Mars-ruled sign, and Mars is the body and how we do what we do. It feels very much like, very literally, tangibly, viscerally taking new actions that are inviting in some greater, deeper kind of wisdom or new beginnings or courage in some sense. So I would say pay attention to body language. You had mentioned something, actually all of you in different ways, really powerful. It's like, what are we sort of limiting? How are we limiting ourselves based on what other people expect of us ultimately? And that very much being a big part of the shadow that we're going to be witnessing during the lunar eclipse, I believe, in Libra, especially where you have 5 degrees to 15 degrees of Libra. That's really going to be powerful. So maybe tuning into, well, how am I showing up in my body language? What are the other ways that I'm communicating? Maybe it's not about words all the time. Maybe it's about, do you physically shrink yourself when you're in the presence of certain people? What do you do perhaps before you're about to go have a verbal conversation with somebody? How can you really get your whole body on board rather than it just be, living from the neck up and feeling like that's where all of the decision making needs to happen? Because I actually think way more of the power is coming from somewhere else. At the very least, it's coming from our solar plexus. There's a really strong affinity of solar plexus energy with Mars and with Aries. It's that will power, our will center. And I also do find it very interesting, just kind of tuning into chakras, reminding me of the Venus gate that we're going to have. It'll be April 7th when the moon is conjunct Venus at 3 degrees Aries. And this is the last gate before she enters her underworld phase. And it's that death by intent energy, but it's, we just had the root. So we're working with the healing and clearing and releasing in the root chakra up until then. And then we're doing this, conscious death, this ego death. And so I do feel like that's another nod to saying, like, we are releasing the mind control of something, and even within ourselves. Like, how do we use our own mind to control our body, to control ourselves, to control our other impulses or instincts or needs? And how can we actually kind of let that be an opportunity to break free of something within ourselves? And then you kind of can start to see how that creates a ripple effect in the people around you. Like, I know for me, if I'm in a space where Like, say you're at a party and nobody's dancing. All you need is that one person to get up and start dancing, and everybody's going to join. It's like you need to see somebody with a freedom in their body for you to almost give yourself the permission to be free in your body. Well, what if that could be you? You know, what if you get to be the person who is dancing first, or singing first, or playing the drum first? Like, not kind of waiting for somebody else to give the permission, because maybe it won't happen. So that feels really empowering. And I do think that's a big part of ego death, because what are we most afraid of when it comes to taking these sort of risks, whether it's something in terms of performing or sharing our heart or sharing our truth? We're just kind of afraid of what people are going to think. We're worried that somehow we're breaking the rules, or that this is the wrong time. I think paying attention to what is coming up for you in terms of your thoughts when you are feeling really called to do something, but then what stops you? Like, what is the excuse? Or like, oh, it's not time for that, or something like that, or it's not socially acceptable, or whatever it is. And maybe it's a good time to engage with change on purpose. I think as we are in this approaching time of Jupiter conjunct Uranus, it's kind of a choose change before change chooses you kind of time. I do think this is how leaders are born. It's being willing to make the first move and do the first bold dance. And maybe, you know, somebody's going to think it's, you know, out of time or out of place. And maybe that's exactly what we need. Something that's actually going to shake us up out of the patterns. So that this is kind of jumping around too, but I feel like this is a theme of this whole time, because we're working so predominantly with Mars energy, Mars ruling Aries North Node, and really featuring prominently in these eclipses. April 10th, after the eclipses, we have Mars conjunct Saturn. And this to me is really suggesting this whole new foundation in terms of how we go after what we want. And there's a spiritual surrender to it with Pisces. And it really reminds me of where our fear is. That's very Saturn. Our desire is also, it's very Mars. And what I love about this time, so April 10th, about 10 hours before that exact Mars-Saturn conjunction, the moon is a perfectly sextile that Mars-Saturn conjunction at 14 degrees Pisces. And then the moon collects that energy and translates it to the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that happens about 10 hours 10 days later, but it's approaching that energy. So there's this sextile, and sextiles bring opportunities. So for me, I'm really wanting to tune into, how do I get to really evaluate? That's a Jupiter, Taurus, Uranus, Taurus word. Like, how do I evaluate what I want in life? That's very Mars. And from the space of looking at all of my wants, from, you know, what do I really desire about it? And what do I fear about it? Why do I want it? But also, why do I not want it? And this, I think, invites a process that gets all of the different parts of you on board. You're in an inherently integral process, because you're looking at the part of you that wants it and the part that doesn't. And that's very Piscean as well. So it does feel like that's the opportunity. And if we can just become very honest with ourselves, you know, tune into that, and then reframe it into, okay, how am I going to trust my body to lead me more rather than my mind? While I'm in this process of ego death, it's like Mercury retrograde. It takes away the strength of reason and logic, but sometimes that is exactly what we need in order to break free of our limiting patterns.
Oh, I love that. Choose change before change chooses you. That just like really kind of, that like had some type of embodied download for me, Nora, while you were sharing that. And I love also bringing in the Mercury retrograde that you spoke about, because when Mercury's retrograde, there's this invitation to let go of reason and logic and the analytical mind and that we always do with our minds, and to really kind of soften into the non-linear and move into the liminal spaces. And there's this really powerful invitation to reframe our stories this Aries season, which is also about Mercury retrograde. Mercury is our mind, thought, and it also can be the stories that we weave through our perception. And so when Mercury goes retrograde, we get to kind of see things in a new way, and then rewrite our story, rewrite our perception, because perception really is everything. How we perceive reality around us affects how we interact with our world, which then affects what kind of comes back to us, flows back to us. It really is like Mercury really is that kind of mediator with our perception, and the moon has a role in the mediator with our stories as well. But particularly, I'm interested in the dance of Mercury and Chiron, because Mercury's making 3 conjunctions to Chiron, one pre-retrograde, one during the retrograde, and one post-retrograde. And Chiron is just such a big theme of this eclipse season and all of Aries season. So the first Chiron Mercury or Mercury Chiron conjunction is March 20th. So this is the energy and the equinox chart, right? And then the second, the retrograde Mercury Chiron conjunction is April 15th. During the retrograde, and then the pre or the post retrograde Mercury Chiron conjunction is May 6th, right? And that's like right with that, like that's right with the cross quarter high holy day as well. And so the solar one, and so that's these are like with the equinox chart, and then being also aligning with that cross quarter high holy day. Like there's something that's really powerful about this Mercury Chiron conjunction. And this theme that's come up throughout that I think everyone's been mentioning as well, like Aries, it's the freedom of our authentic expression, the free to be me kind of energy. And that can be part of like this Chiron and Aries story that we're working with. Where has it not felt safe to be in our authentic expression? Where has our like aliveness, our life force energy actually been kind of suppressed down because it's like, oh, it didn't feel safe for me to show up in my authentic essence. When we're in our authentic energy, when we have that freedom to be ourselves, like our energy just flows, our life force energy flows. And then when we start to, oh wait, I need to like inhibit my expression, oh maybe like this part of myself is a little too much, or maybe it's like, you know, like too not appropriate for this setting, right? Maybe like so many of pretty much everyone that's watching this, you know, we're magical beings, and it's like maybe when we're in the like muggle world, it's like, oh, I need to like hide that part of myself, right? Like when we do that, it suppresses the flow of our life force energy. We get like energetic blockages. So when we can be truly who we are, we have that freedom, it gets our life force energy moving. And there's something that's really important about the Chiron mythology and the Chiron story. So we all have like this Chiron wound. And typically with our Chiron wound, there's typically like at the deepest level that we tend to think that we tend to all have it in some way. We think, gosh, there's this thing that's like fundamentally wrong with me. And it's like, if I just didn't have that thing, whatever the story about our Chiron wound is about, if I just like didn't have that, then like my life would be better, or whatever it is in some way. And so tend to, when we go on our Chiron journey of healing, oftentimes it's like we want to fix this thing we think is wrong with ourselves. We want to make it go away. But actually, there's nothing wrong with ourselves. It's the Chiron wound is actually more about the story than the thing. And because in Chiron's mythology, his wound never actually went away. And it's his wound that elicited so much compassion, and it catalyzed and inspired so many of Chiron's healing gifts. He became the greatest, you know, oracle, astrologer, healer, herbalist, like healer in so many ways. And so when we're on our Chiron journey, we're often trying to heal this thing that we think is wrong with ourselves and make it go away. But that's never going to heal the Chiron wound, because it's actually healing the story. When we can come into full acceptance and move into full acceptance and self-love about whatever our Chiron thing is, when we realize there's actually nothing to change about ourselves, the very thing that we think is wrong about ourselves, there's usually a deep thing of acceptance and belonging with Chiron, because there's the abandonment wound with Chiron. When we stop abandoning ourselves and realize it's the very thing that we think is wrong with ourselves is actually our magic, is actually our medicine. It transmutes and it creates all this medicine that we'll have to share with others. Compassion and acceptance and surrender is a big thing with the Chiron story. And there's with the equinox chart as well, Hygeia is conjunct Neptune. She's also, you know, the goddess of healing. And so with Hygeia conjunct Neptune, to the degree in Pisces and the equinox chart, there is this, someone said it already, I think Kaylin did, healing available to us beyond maybe what we've ever thought is possible. And there's just something really powerful. And I think with also the Libra lunar eclipse, we have Venus, right? Kind of the guardian of the Libra mysteries with Saturn. Mara, you spoke about this. With the Aries solar eclipse, we have Mars, the guardian of the Aries mysteries with Saturn and Pisces. There's something too about spiritual maturity with our feminine and masculine that we're being initiated into. And spiritual and maturity with Saturn and Pisces looks maybe very different than what we might consider maturity with Saturn and other signs. And I just actually more of open and inquiry and an invitation for, if you feel inspired to kind of contemplate and what that might mean to you, and coming into a new, like perhaps an initiation or a wise elder or spiritual maturity with the way you work with your feminine and masculine energy within. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
And weaving into what you were saying, Jamie, I think that the maturity and also what you were saying about like showing who we are in every, like, for instance, if you're a magical being and then you go into the muggle world and then suddenly you have to don't show, like you have to hide your magical powers. I think that all these Venus with Saturn, Mars with Saturn in this portal is telling us that it's the time to bring the magic out into the world, and that's the way to change the economy. And because this portal is just preparing us for that Jupiter, Uranus in Taurus. That is what we value. What do we really, what's the pleasure? What is the economy is just based on an exchange of value. So if we, as a collective, change what we value, the economy is going to change naturally in a smooth process. It doesn't have to be really difficult, and it starts, right? Like, let's enjoy the process as well. Let's feel it into the body, and that doesn't have to be a hustle of the time. And I think that's something that we are healing as well with Saturn, like how to reframe Saturn in a way that the obstacles and the challenges is something that we can enjoy as well. Like, it's just like whoever has like a strong Saturn, and Saturn is going to be a player in the background of all of this, because he's like the two guardians of the eclipses are coming into him or her. I think there is, at the end of the story, is just a maturity of knowing that whatever experiences you had in your life, that is what is yours to share with the world, because you didn't read it in a book. You embody that energy because you have experienced that story many, many times. And that weaves into the Chiron mystery as well, because it's the alchemy of your wounds, your is the gold. It's like, is what you are transmuted into gold. So you cannot really go over it. Like, you have to go through it. You have to really feel the wound, feel the challenges, feel everything. And Pisces is a lot about feeling also the collective suffering, and knowing that is the time to take action in within our sphere of what is ours to take action. That is a very Aries thing. And for some people, maybe it can be a more leadership position in a big community. And for other people, can be just being the best mom in the world, bringing a new way of uh, being a mother. And for another person can be just singing to the river every night and every morning, and that is their offering to the collective. So our offering to the collective is going to look very different, but they are all needed. Like, there is no way that whoever, like every one of us, like everyone who is listening to us, have this call, has this spiritual gift, that now is the time. Now is the time. Like, there is such a, like, it's not the time to say, the day that that is fixed, the day that that over there is fixed, the day that the government change. We are the ones changing the government. We are the ones changing economy. We are the ones changing politics. We are the one changes health system. Like everything is not happening outside of us. So the more of us that we embrace that we are magical beings and that we don't have to hide in the muggle world. And I think that I have seen it a lot as a mentor for entrepreneurs, that if they do like astrology and tarot and shamanic and career business, like there is this, no, but I have to fit in this label, right? So I cannot do all these things. I have to just fit into one. And at the end of the day, our uniqueness is to embrace everything that we are, even when it seems that it doesn't make sense, but we make sense. Like it's a very individual embracing the truth of what makes sense for you will be what, when you share it, is medicine for other people, because it gives them the permission as well to, that they don't need it, right? Nobody needs the permission to be who they are, but sometimes it's inspiring to find people who embrace who they are. So then we refract to each other our light and our shadow at the same time. And I think that, and it's not a logical process. Like this whole period, as Nura was saying, the mind doesn't have anything to do with it, because it's like the South Node is in Libra, that is an air sign. Pluto is in Aquarius, that is an air sign. And everything else is like in Pisces, Aries, Taurus. No logical. Neither of the three of them are like, it's very wild, it's very primitive, it's very your body, your instinct, your connection with something much bigger that we can even imagine with Pisces. And from there, we share. And I think it's so exciting, right? Like it's a time of really being excited as well. That is something that is very Aries. It doesn't have to be a heavy weight. We can just, our passions are also the way forward. So if we are doing something, like for instance, if we are having a business, if we are writing a book, and we are not passionate about it anymore, it means it's dead. It means we need to move on, but we don't, because there is this unhealthy Saturn telling us, no, if you started this, you need to finish, but maybe you need to compose that project into something different and find the passion again, because if it's yours to bring, you will feel the life force in the project. And when that is not there, there's a sign, okay, there is something else to move towards.
Oh my goodness. The wisdom here is just so, so, so good. So I think we've really covered the most important essence of what's happening in the Aries solar month. I want to wish happy birthday to our two Aries, Mar and Jamie. And imagining that it's going to be life transforming for you to also be having a solar return at this time. And thinking that some words that could be helpful to people to remember as we're going through this time. Like I like mantras. So thinking of courage, being able to have the courage to choose what it is that you need to choose before it chooses you. And kindness, because we need to be kind to ourselves and compassion, having compassion, because that is where the true healing takes place. And acceptance, because when we're not accepting, we're resisting. So we need to get to the place of acceptance. It doesn't mean we like it, doesn't mean we choose it, doesn't mean but we just accept it and we take the energy off of it that is in that resistance place. And then the magic and miracles can happen. So with that, we'll just say until we meet again in the Taurus solar month.